but feel free to chime in if there's any questions you have on my slides. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm a pretty active person. I'm a mountain lover. I've climbed to various mountains. All of the mountains above, there's 58 mountains in Colorado above 14,000 feet. I've climbed all of them, climbed Rainier, been to Everest Base Camp, climbed a 21,000 foot mountain in Bolivia, and I also loved running. It wasn't always like that. I had to slowly but surely work my way up from a mile into long trail half marathons that I love doing in Colorado. So I love this topic and how it transitions between Agile and adoption. I thought a lot about this topic when I was rehabilitating. In January, I had lumbar disc replacement. I had degenerative disc disease. My disc, the L5-S1, was degenerating, and I got a new disc. So going through my rehabilitation, I was doing a lot of walking, slowly starting to run, kind of thinking of my body as an organization. I wanted to jump right back into what I was doing before, go through that full body transformation, be able to run and hike and climb and do all those things that I love. But as I was going through that rehabilitation, just getting back into the gym, doing some cardio, got approved to go swimming. The gyms shut down in March. As we all know, we have all been stuck inside. Physical distancing, I like to say, not social distancing, but physical distancing. So I had to pivot. I had to reevaluate the things that I was doing to rehabilitate. I didn't want gyms being shut down or things like that to inhibit my rehabilitation. So I had to think of how to do things a little bit differently. I was incorporating things like the TRX and bands. I bought a mountain bike to start mountain biking, and then I slowly started to progress back into running. I got up to a mile, and then 3 miles, and recently gotten up to 5 and 6 miles. So I really, during these different things, changing the way I was working out or rehabilitating, I had to change my mindset. I knew that I couldn't jump right back into running long distances, but I had to try different things by doing the TRXs at home, bands, mountain biking, and things like that. So I really had to change my mindset to get into that transformation. So that's why I'm associating it. I did a lot of thinking on this topic. Doing Agile versus being Agile. We could all do Agile. We could learn how to run sprints, work in Kanbans, do some daily stand-ups, demos, retros. Being Agile is a mindset change, intent-based management. It's more of a process than a transition. Process transition is cultural. You're not totally through that transformation until your organization is Agile. And we can see that with doing Agile, you may have more increased visibility and communication, increased productivity potentially, you learn some new skills, and then you are able to adapt and change priorities. Now, being Agile, going through that transformation, has greater employee engagements. There's leadership at all levels, not just in that typical hierarchical where you have executives, C-levels, directors, managers, and on down to the team members. You can be leaders at all levels, and it really, being Agile really encompasses that and leads us to that. There's continuous learning also. Just because you did some training at the beginning, you launched some teams, things like that, you want to continually learn. You want to adjust and pivot. And then, of course, there's customer engagement. You're really getting that continuous feedback. All right, and Agile adoption, I like to say, focuses on practices, while transformation focuses on the mindset. And there's some big differences between a 5K and a marathon, just as there is between an adoption and a transformation. Some key differences between a 5K and a marathon: the speed of change, quick to slow. You could do a 5K pretty quickly. You could get up off your couch and run 3.1 miles if you really wanted to. There might be a little bit of pain in there, but there is a little bit more mental discipline and focus to run a marathon. You have to plan a little bit more. Sometimes if you're training for a marathon, you could go through a training plan that takes anywhere from 12 to 18 weeks, depending on your experience with running. Preparation. There's pretty significant preparation when it comes to a marathon. You might change the way you eat. You might have some long runs during the week and on the weekends, so you might have to get up a little bit earlier maybe to run, or change your evenings a little bit to get those miles in. Again, that goes to some mental discipline. Lifestyle change. You might start eating differently, working out a little bit differently, incorporating things other than yoga. So changing that lifestyle. And pain and suffering. The potential for a little bit more pain and suffering in a marathon is a lot more. Most of us can do anywhere from 1 to 3 miles and be pretty okay the next day. Same things for Agile adoption versus a transformation. There's a level of disruption. It's probably a little bit lower when you are going through an adoption. In a transformation, a little bit higher. Emphasis on practices for the adoption and values and principles for transformation. Adoption may be quicker and a little bit slower for a transformation. Now, organizations at any size can go through an adoption and lead into a transformation. Your productivity gains may be variable, meaning everyone is not on the same page. And in a transformation, it could be more sustainable. They can be measured more easily because it's broader. And Agile adoption influences the way the teams do their work. It's a process change, right? You're going from waterfall to Agile. There may be some legacy or more traditional driven approaches. You're experimenting with Agile using sprints or Kanbans. You might incorporate your daily stand-ups, go through some sort of Agile training, and boom, you could run sprints if you really wanted to. With a transformation, it changes the way the organizations deliver value. It's a process of transforming the culture to one of agility, inclusive of business agility on all levels. And there's a fundamental way that people think and feel, and it's relatively disruptive when we're talking about a transformation. And with a transformation, it's more of a widespread impact. When some teams are adopting Agile, it could be a team here and there, but a transformation includes the whole organization, anywhere from HR practices to compliance and legal, and all across the entire organization. All right, so Agile adoption, it's like a 5K. Like I said, you can do it fairly quickly. You could go from sitting on the couch to running 3.1 miles on the same day if you wanted to. You might work your way into it by doing some longer walks and jogs and then running. But similar to adopting Agile methods, your teams can go through some basic Agile 101 trainings, identifying and training Scrum Masters and product owners, and you could go right into stand-ups and demos within a short time frame. So I have a little bit of a plan here, going from a sit to a run state. When you are sitting, per se, you're potentially not conditioned to run a 5K. Your muscles may be a little weak. You're not cardiovascular ready. So you're in that crawl state. That's that tipping point where you are recognizing that your company or your organization needs to keep up with market needs, and you need to identify that desired state. So whether that means getting your product to market faster, customer feedback, maybe you want to spend less money getting that product out to market, and then in the crawl state, where you're identifying teams. So we have that Miller's Law, that magical number of 7 plus or minus 2, where you're identifying teams. It's very important to identify dedicated roles, and I really say dedicated roles and responsibilities within those teams. That's your crawl state, because many organizations or many teams form their teams, but they are partially dedicated to the team, and that makes it very difficult to capture or identify what the team's capacity is and how much work they can get through. We always want to make sure that we're measuring these things. So it's very important to have dedicated teams. And then of course there's communication. You want to communicate to your organization and your teams that this Agile adoption is happening. There may be, there's oftentimes a lack of communication where some people are, scrumming, they're going through daily stand-ups, and other leaders are still going with those drive-by and asking people to get things done and fire drills. So we want to make sure that it's communicated on all levels. Now in the walk state, you're getting that plan together. You're conducting Agile trainings. There may be, a full day Agile 101 or a half day, or maybe a multiple to accommodate people's schedules. In the beginning stages, people are still doing their regular jobs. I've heard that many times, where they have their regular jobs and then they're doing their Agile responsibilities. And then you're conducting in-depth training to dedicated roles. And that might be some Scrum Master training, some product owner training. Those all may vary depending on where you are getting these trainings done. You don't have to get certified to be able to run sprints and have an Agile adoption. You can have some basic training. I think it's always great to make sure that your backlog is defined and refined, and that there's story sizing workshops in place before you start sprinting. We want to make sure that everybody on the team is on the same page. The team needs to agree on story sizing, whether it be t-shirt size, Fibonacci. I personally like to go through a matrix where the teams go through the type of work that they do with a matrix of high, medium, low, complexity, uncertainty, and risk, small, medium, large, effort and duration. And then the team can come to a consensus of what a Fibonacci 1 is, or a 2, or a 3, or a 5, or an 8, 13, whatever it may be. So the team comes to an idea of what those points are, instead of animal sizes. That's always difficult for my brain to wrap around, how I'm going to relate that to work, or this story is twice as large or 3 times as large as this story. That's always harder for me, so I like to do a little matrix. And then jogging. We're in the jogging state, and you're establishing those cadences, including sprint planning, daily stand-ups, refinement sessions, demo and retrospectives. So you're really starting to get into that almost run state. And I always like to coach changing the language and terminology. Instead of saying resources, we're talking about our team members or the people on the teams instead of resources. We are starting to use more agile terms and continually doing that. Now in the run state, it's continuous. You want to drive best practices and continuous improvement and prove it, data and facts. How are you in that run state? How are you continuously improving? If you're running a 5K, how do you know that you improved your speed? Is that through better time, no injuries? You could do that also with your adoption by rapid prototyping, customer feedback. In business, you know, how do we prove that we are being more agile or adopting agile? Did we make money? Did we save money? Did we do both? So we could get metrics and prove that we are improving. Any questions there, thoughts?
Nothing in the chat yet.
All right. So this is just my little Agile adoption roadmap. Of course, this can be updated, changed to however it meets the organization needs. This timeline's just a basic timeline of what could happen as your adoption roadmap, where you are communicating and reaching out to leadership and identifying the team member roles, making sure that you're including who is going to be a product owner, a scrum master, who are the stakeholders. Business analysts usually kind of get a little lost in this. Business analysts make great product owners. Project managers sometimes fall in between both the scrum master and the product owner. Depends if they're a little bit more technical. I always like to make sure that the organization is communicating with these people instead of just assigning them to a role, making sure that they understand the roles and responsibilities. As an example, I've worked with a woman who had been a project manager for 15, 20 years, and she was told that she was being a scrum master, and man, she did not want to be. She was, one of those types of people that really like to just do her work and go through the day and didn't like speaking in front of people. So it was really difficult for her. So you just want to make sure that you're communicating what the roles and responsibilities are and making sure the right person is in the right role. You want to prep the teams. Make sure that there's invites sent out for any sort of trainings, working sessions, a little bit of ahead of time. You don't want to just jump in and put something on someone's calendar. And then going through those trainings, maybe they're Agile one-on-one trainings for a full day, maybe they're a half day, but you definitely want the whole team to be available for that. Additionally, conducting workshops for the product owners or the scrum masters, making sure that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities. Again, it's not just the teams. We want to make sure that stakeholders, supervisors, people in the business who are potentially the customers, they're getting their training too in what their responsibilities are to make these Agile teams successful. Then you want to define and implement those ceremonies with the teams. This could be a working session. It's a team agreement. It's not just one person putting things on calendars. What days are best to start a sprint? Maybe it's a Wednesday, maybe it's a Tuesday. It could be an earlier organization where people get in at 7 and you start your stand-up a little bit later. And so you have to work with all of the team to make sure that they are all on the same page and come to an agreement. You want to conduct feature and story writing workshops. It could be a 4-hour session, just depends on how much work there is, if the work needs to be defined or if it's already pretty defined. Backlog refinement sessions. And then there's launching. You go and launch the team. You start with that first stand up. And you know, everybody is given their daily updates of what they worked on yesterday, what they're working on today, and any impediments. And then you continue to coach and observe. You always want to have proof at the end of it. How at the end of those 14 weeks, how are we proving that this adoption is working? You know, is there teams have delivered more features? Are there less defects? Is there higher throughput? Is there less carryover from sprint to sprint? Do we have happy customers and stakeholders? Do we have happy employees? Do they have less WIP? Do they feel more accomplished with being work in progress? Are they feel more accomplished because they're getting more work completed? Are they happier because they actually have someone protecting them from drive-bys and side work coming in where they feel that they have to get it done because a supervisor or someone told them to get done? Are they happier? Are they less stressed? Is there less attrition? So we want to make sure that we are gathering those metrics and continuously learning and improving from our retrospectives. Now, with any adoption can come some potential disruptions. And that could be from a lack of customer involvement, not having the right teams, teams that are siloed. I've definitely worked with teams where couple people were doing the work, a couple of people were doing maintenance work, and they really weren't coming together as a team. So perhaps that wasn't really the right team. There still is not an entire understanding of story sizing or points. There's a lack of collaboration. There's no backlog or prioritization. Things just kind of come in because we needed to have a sprint planning. We want to make sure that we're avoiding things like that. And we have to break that fire drill culture. So these are some potential disruptions that we want to try to avoid, or at least notice as we are going through this adoption. And then when we start to embrace that Agile adoption, we're improving the way that we are working, making those works into smaller, more workable chunks of work. We're getting feedback from our customers and our stakeholders. We're accepting that things change. There's always a continuous learning and improvement that goes through it. And again, show the proof. Let's show the metrics, make sure that we are improving so we can adjust and continue the cycle of plan, do, check, and adjust. All right, now Agile Transformation. Okay, we're getting to that marathon. We've gone through some training plans. We've gone through some sprints and things like that. Now we are ready to go through that transformation, but it's a marathon. We need to change our lifestyle, our mindset. No more Netflix and ice cream. You need to get on your transformation routine. Well, maybe some Netflix and ice cream, that's okay too. So we have the same. We have from sit to run state with a marathon. In the sit state, you want to be able to establish an operating model. And an operating model, that could be any type of scaled framework. There's a handful out there. Operating models such as SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework. There's Scrum at Scale. There's LESS, which is Large Scale Scrum. There's DAD, Disciplined Agile Delivery. So you have to make sure that you have an operating model that the whole organization agrees upon, because we want to use a leaner approach and eliminate waste eventually. You want to address the people, the process, tools, and culture, making sure that all your tools are in place, whether you use something like a Jira or a Rally. Oftentimes large organizations integrate the two, and there's some potential problems that can happen. People are not trained. So you want to make sure that you are addressing training people on those tools, the processes, how agility, how these frameworks may work, and how to address the culture. So that's in the sit state. In the crawl state, we're identifying those high visibility teams. Hopefully that some teams are going through the sprints already. You want to make sure that you have some strong teams before really scaling. You are applying and refining the operating model. So maybe you pick something like SAFe, and you are establishing ARTs, Agile release trains. You want to make sure that you're adjusting those cadences. Sometimes, a 12-week PI does not necessarily work, things like that. So you want to make sure that you're continually adjusting and refining it. And then in that walk state, again, you're further refining the model. I have this in almost every one of these states, because it's not just one and done. You can't just put in a model and say that it's going to work every time. There's always continuous refinement of that. You still want to train people, continually train people, make sure that you're adjusting career paths, and things like that. What is a project manager who has now become a product manager? What does that career path look like? Or a project manager who is a scrum master. We want to make sure that that's visible too, and adopted by the entire organization. And then governance. We want to make sure that there's oversight and decision making of spending, audit and compliance, forecasting, expenses, and measurement. When we're going through this transformation, again, the transformation is an entire organization, whether it be organizationally wide, or it's just a smaller section of an organization. But we want to make sure that we're going through that. Now, in the run states, we're competing. We want to be the best organization, the best in the markets. We want to be the organization that has the most satisfied employees, meaning advancements, pay, bonuses, and all of that is success through proof, through those metrics. Again, make money, save money, or both. And it's a constant refinement and learning and improvement. Now I have a little bit of a roadmap here, where as an organization is going through a transformation, they go through an exploration state where they're assessing it, they're forming agile teams, they're going through training and support. You want to make sure that those business models and technology architectures, portfolio management, value stream management, and things like that are happening as we go into enablements, where you're setting the vision and strategy, you're potentially taking on an agile transformation partner, you're going through scaling framework trainings, whichever one your organization chooses. If you're picking something like SAFe, you're establishing ARTs and PI plannings. If you are using something like Scrum at Scale, you're establishing those EATs, they call them, executive action teams. You're making sure that your culture is adapting, The communication of vision and strategy is happening in PI plannings and things like that. Then we go into lean thinking, where we're doing some value stream mapping, improving our lean budgeting and technical practices, and making sure that flow of work is streamlined, which leads us into delivery, where there's agile practices in all areas and departments, continuous delivery through things like DevOps. There's improved team dynamics and collaboration. We get quality feedback loops and things like that. And then we lead into our full transformation. Of course, things happen all the time. We don't just end at transformation. It's continual, it's organizational, it's business agility. The whole entire organization, when you're in a full transformation, goes all the way from HR, hiring adjustments, marketing teams, and legal and compliance and things like that. There's still that continuous training and coaching happening. There's product information, market strategy and adaptability. We always want that customer validation and learning and experimentation happening. So transformation takes a long time, and there's always some potential transformation disruptions. Those can be failure to deliver continuous value to the customer, leadership's being out of alignment. Biggest pitfalls, sometimes leaders tend to say, hey, you're going to be agile, and then they don't care if you actually are improving and things like that. Potentially arts, if you're implementing SAFe, arts are not aligned around value streams. There's trainings to certain individuals and not all. I know of an organization that they trained a couple of RTEs, or release train engineers, a couple of product owners, and boom, they were in full art mode and running PIs. So you want to make sure that it goes across the entire organization. Prioritization doesn't happen often. That's a really big pitfall. Everything is a top 10 or top priority instead of going through like a 1 through 10. Scaling too soon and too fast. Just because you're a large organization who has some teams that are running sprint doesn't mean that you are ready to transform across the entire organization. There's a lot of anti-patterns that happen, and people give up and revert to their old ways. We used to do it this way, so I'm just going to continue doing that. You guys could do your sprints. I'm just going to do what I'm doing and have my project plans, and I'm just going to do it this way. That's always a big one. Reverting back to old ways, and then not improving tech practices. There's old architectures. We still go through our sprints, and then we have 4 weeks of testing and UAT and things like that. We need to make sure that we're improving those tech practices as well. And then there's no budget. That happens quite often. So we want to make sure that there's a big need in change management to make sure that these disruptions go across all of the organization. Now, some takeaways. Adoption and transformation, emphasis on practices, while transformation is more on values and principles. Of course, I didn't really talk about, the Agile Manifesto or the principles and stuff like that. I think we've all seen those. Adoptions typically cover part of the organization, where transformation is over the entire organization. The disruption that adoption is relatively low, and in a transformation is relatively high. And I really like the middle one on there. Adoption focuses on what you do, and transformation focuses on how you do it. So, any questions?
Yeah, we have a few in the chat.
Okay,
So,
sure.
The first one we have is around, how do you like measuring throughput? It was referring to the slide on adoption.
How do you measure throughput?
How do you like measuring throughput?
Oh, how do I like measuring throughput? Ooh, that's a difficult one. I mean, there's a variety of different ways. I think that the Agile coach question in that would be that I would like to talk to leadership, make sure that all of the metrics, are we getting feedback from customers and stakeholders? Are we getting products out to market sooner? I think that's a larger question, a larger answer in conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I want to make a comment on that one though, real quick myself, because it's my favorite metrics, because I do like focusing on the flow-based metrics, and right, the throughput is things exiting your system, and so that's what we're supposed to be doing, is delivering value early and often, and throughput is one good way to see that. And I'm going to leave it at that, because that could be a long conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Todd, feel free to reach out to me, and we can have that discussion more as well. So,
This Todd, the reason I was asking that was, you had it on your slide as one of the ways you look for proof is higher throughput, and I have found that one to be super challenging. I really like, I mean, the other ones that you're referring to, like customer satisfaction, and those I find easier ways to assess the progress we're making. So I thought you might have had some success at points maybe with throughput measurements. So that was why I was asking.
the next one is, Sandra said she loved your idea about the matrix for estimation. And please mention it again and detail it a little more.
Yeah, so I can, if you reach out to me, I can give you this matrix that I have. But basically what I like to do is I start off when I'm doing this workshop with high, medium, low risk or uncertainty. Now, depending on the type of work, let's say, you know, if it's software development or something like that, each team will say, well, this is, you know, a handful of things are low risk. Let's say we're talking about a website or something like that. Low risk or uncertainty is, you know, changing some colors, maybe some, and I'm just coming off the top of my head. Medium risk is maybe adding some drop-down menus or a cart or something like that. And high risk, there's something bigger out there that they don't know. Maybe it's some sort of third-party integration. And then the effort and duration, I have small, medium, large. So it's the team really saying what's high risk, low risk, what's a big effort and duration. And this really opens up the conversation with some more experienced developers or some less experienced developers. And that way the whole team is having that conversation of what the story points may look like. And then I go through a matrix of, well, if it's a low and a small, then everybody with their poker planning cards says, oh, it's a 1 or it's a 2. And then they have that conversation of why they think it's a 1 or a 2. And then they start to develop this matrix, you know, and then a medium and a medium maybe is a 5 and stuff like that. I can get you, if you email me, my information is there. You can contact me on LinkedIn, and I have a whole matrix. It's a fun little workshop. I actually really like doing it. I've seen so many light bulbs go on when they're like, oh, well, that's way easier than saying that the story's sized like a turtle or an elephant, you know. So yeah, it definitely reach out to me, and I can give you that information.
Okay. Another question around by hierarchical titles. Does this mean a leaderless structure?
No, I mean, I don't think that titles are ever going to go away, but we want to make sure when we are going through any sort of adoption or transformation that that everybody isn't necessarily on the same page. Well, everybody's on the same page, but not necessarily. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to revert back. So yes, there's always going to be titles. We can't get around that, but we want to make sure that all the teams are functioning, that there's not this fear of their jobs being lost for not performing or doing something, that they're not afraid to go to their leaders. Establishing in the transformation, establishing those communication channels, so that there's open transparency and communication. Maybe that's through an art sync or a scrum of scrum, eventually standing up those portfolios and things like that. So there's always going to be those different layers, but yeah, hierarchies, I don't see them going away. I think in organizations, they're just way too difficult to say that everybody's on the same level. I don't know if I answered that for you, but there's always going to be.
The next one, Ellie was curious, what happened with the PM who was not feeling comfortable with speaking to audiences, especially since
So it was a Scrum Master. Yeah, it was a Scrum Master. She eventually, you know, as I was going through some coaching sessions with her, just said, I really just don't want to be doing this. But she was afraid to talk to her supervisor because there were still supervisors in that role. And I had that conversation with the supervisor that she was maybe she was better suited on the team as more of a product owner, or can be, you know, a different part of the team. And that reached out to other people. We reached out to other people on the team to see if they had a desire to learn those different skills and really take on that. So we didn't want to force her into doing something that she didn't want to do. It was very difficult for her. And we eventually trained another Scrum Master to take her role in that.
All right. What are some examples of things said or brought up when Scrum Masters protect the team from drive-bys, or when the team Scrum Master address reverting to anti-patterns or old ways?
What was the beginning part of that question?
What are examples of things said or brought up when the Scrum Masters protect the team from drive-bys?
So some examples would be if the team has to get comfortable, first of all, with coming to their Scrum Master and saying, you know, so-and-so asked me to do this work. So you need to bring it to your Scrum Master. Then they can work with the product owner to get that into the backlog to make sure that the work is defined and prioritized. I've definitely had many instances where, you know, an executive came and just was saying something, blurred something out, and that person immediately thought that it had to be priority number one. And in a retrospective with that executive, for example, I said, you know, is this part of your priority number one? Is this? Oh, no. That was just something that I had an idea. We don't need to do that. So we want to make sure that you are having.
Uh-oh. She had an issue right before we started too.
Yep, but I can still hear you, Leland.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely hers, not necessarily Zoom. So while we're waiting to see if she rejoins, I think she had a second computer set up ready to like hop on. So hopefully we'll see that. Just one of the things I've done before with the drive-bys and is trying to make people aware of the impact it has on the team. So this set up a simple chart that called an interruption bucket, where that every time someone comes by and they interrupt the team with one of those drive-bys, we put it on a sticky what it was, and we at a high level group them together, and we kind of have a high water mark on the interruption bucket. And when it hits that level, we pull them all those together and we do some root cause analysis and see, why did this happen? Why is this happening? So we can understand it better, so then we could try to address what that problem is. So that's at least one way I've handled the drive-bys, making them aware of, you know, it happens often. We want to understand the root cause, and then here's the impacts that it's happening. I see we have Adrian back, so we'll.
I'm back. Sorry about that. Oh, working from home and internet.
When you pay for high performance internet and it doesn't.
And it doesn't. Yeah.
We were just talking about the protecting from the drive-bys. I don't know if you had anything else.
I don't know what was last said before. I was just talking to myself.
Or actually, we could. What about when the team or Scrum Master address reverting to anti-patterns or old ways? We didn't get far on that one.
When the team or Scrum Master reverts, you know, I've seen that a lot more in transformations, where there's reverting to old ways, and like, for example, project plans, you know, giving updates with PowerPoint presentations. That's just a small example, instead of using the tools. So we want to make sure that we're continually making sure that we are giving reports, giving updates, using the tools in the methodology or in the framework that's chosen, because we always want to prove that it's working. Sometimes I think that goes back to that continuous learning. We want to make sure that we're training people. I've definitely been in organizations where you simply give someone trainings, help them with the work. Maybe it's entering in writing features, writing epics and things like that. It's that continuous learning and improvement, so that they can start leaning on those new skills, then reverting back to their old ways.
Okay. Which anti-patterns have you seen that drives the organization to go back to old ways?
Well, almost all of those pitfalls. A lot of those are, you know, anti-patterns. Again, as an example, in an organization, I believe that they, you know, started scaling too fast, too soon. Only a handful of people were trained on the framework that was chosen. They started their PI planning without training the executives, the business people on prioritization and objectives and what their end goal was. And then, you know, people just started to say, well, this isn't working for us. We're just going to do work the way we used to be. And so instead of, again, continually training, continually improving, making sure that, you know, the product owners and product managers knew how to write features and stories, prioritize them, and that they were actually given the authority or ability to set those priorities. That's a big anti-pattern where a product owner or product manager has to ask somebody else if it's a high priority. Those are some big anti-patterns there too. I mean, there's just a handful that can be done. Did I answer that question, or do you want any more further definition? If I can, in our no minutes remaining.
No minutes remaining. But we do one final one because it's the questions around an organization looking to change from waterfall to agile. Do you recommend they start with Agile Adoption, a few teams, then expand to transformation organization wide? And did we lose her again?
I think that definitely starting with an adoption and making sure that teams, Scrum teams are working well together before going through that transformation. Again, it goes back to that scaling too soon and too fast. Let's make sure that our teams are strong in what they are doing, that they are getting good customer feedback, they are not having too much whip, they have a full understanding of what they are doing and why they are doing it or not. Again, in the end, make sure that it comes down to getting work to the market faster, but we want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way.
Okay. So yeah, last one in here, Sandra, great presentation. Adrian, thanks. Thank you so much, Agile Austin, for doing. So she's in Brazil and can participate. So great.
Yeah, cool. Great.
Glad to have these others. I mean, I think last time that was what Vasco asked everyone to put where they were from, and I think it was like half the people were not from Austin. So that was great to see. So Adrian, I'll get with you about the deck and those kind of things. If there's other questions, what's the best way? Should they reach out to you? I mean, we have where you can put questions and meet up, and people could continue the conversation there in the meetup one.
Yeah, I mean, if the meetup, since everybody has access to that, that could potentially be a great way that was visible to everyone. Or my email's on there, or my LinkedIn profile, and it's Adrian Rinaldi. I don't think there's many of me. Well, there's just one. But
just one. So, all right.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Adrian, and thanks everyone for joining. Stop recording and